Welcome to the Scam Economy with your host, Matt Bender.
Are you sick and tired of all the fees involved with banking and the old financial system? Well then, come over to the Ethereum network, where this past Saturday, you could have paid the low price of 4 figures in fees just to make a 2-figure transaction. Folks, welcome to Scam Economy. My name is Matt Binder, and today we'll be talking about what the hell was going on with the Ethereum network this past weekend, where gas fees that users pay for every transaction were at astronomical, through the roof levels. Let me give you a hint. It involves the apes. And plus, if that's not enough to make you smack your forehead in disbelief, crypto people have a great idea on how they can use the blockchain in light of the possible ruling on Roe v. Wade from the Supreme Court. Oh boy. Anyway, you're not going to want to miss this episode. But first, if you like what you've heard on previous episodes, or you're just tuning in for the first time and you end up liking what you hear, please, by all means, feel free to become a patron at patreon.com/MattBinder to financially help this show grow. I promise you, there are no fees wrapped up in that. And of course, go to scameconomy.com for all the links to where you can find this show. And now, to help us walk through this doozy of an episode, developer, Wikipedia editor, and the creator of Web3isgoinggreat.com, Molly White. Thank you, Molly, for joining me once again on Scam Economy.
Thanks for having me back.
Now, Molly, there were so many things that happened over the past week that, being that you run a website that literally tracks these very type of things that happen day in, day out. I mean, you were the perfect person, the first person, I should say, that came to mind to have on to talk about this, these various events. And I feel like the first we should get to, and this, this wasn't some big news, but it does sort of, I think, require us to mention, especially being that if you weren't living under a rock this past week, or maybe, I don't know, you just woke up from a very long slumber, you probably heard on Monday night the news broke via a leak that the Supreme Court is, as of right now at least, planning to overturn Roe v. Wade. And, a lot of takes, all over about this. Not good news, obviously, but for the purpose of Scam Economy, there was a very specific take that I just couldn't believe I was seeing. And that is the ingenious idea to establish a abortion DAO, as they called it. And I got to say, I'm not going to name names because I actually saw this idea float. There was one tweet that went viral that floated the idea, but actually I searched it once I saw it and I was like, wow, there's more than one person completely unconnected, like they weren't seeing each other's tweets, who had this same idea. And I just couldn't believe what I was seeing.
Yeah, you and me both.
So what abortion DAO, what would you think, what are your opinions on it?
Yeah, I mean, the good news is the tweets that I saw were mostly just like, maybe this would be a good idea, and nothing that looked like people were actually, leaping into action to do this, although, give them time and I'm sure someone will. But yeah, that seems like a remarkably bad idea to me. There's sort of inherent issues with trying to, create crowdfund using crypto, just in that, if the person on the other end doesn't already use crypto and isn't familiar with it, then they have to set up a wallet and figure out how to exchange it into currency that they can actually use, and then all that kind of thing. Or the DAO has to do it and then transfer that currency to them, in which case, why bother with crypto in the first place? Why not just use any of the many crowdfunding, platforms that are out there? But in addition to that, I think there's a lot of concerning ideas around, Web3 based abortion networks. There were people sort of romanticizing this, like, you know, stand up against the man, underground railroad of abortion providers. And it's like, no, please don't do that on the blockchain. Just the idea around recording who is in need of assistance to receive an abortion when it could potentially be criminalized. It's just incredibly irresponsible, I think. And not only that, but there's concerns on the other end as well. If you are basically providing funds to people who are seeking abortions when it's become illegal, or if you are, behind the organization of a group that's doing that, the worst thing to do is write down what you're doing, and especially not on like a public immutable blockchain. So I really hope that those were just sort of, spur of the moment tweets that people dashed off without putting too much thought into it. But I'm a little worried about what we're going to see in the coming weeks as people sort of continue that thought process.
Yeah, it seems every time I've seen someone float the idea of a insert blank DAO in response to a recent current event, it's always so bizarre to me, because what they're looking to do is basically fundraise or
Right.
crowdsource fundraising in some way. And it's like people have been doing that for decades.
Long before the internet existed, there has been mutual aid. Yeah, it's bizarre to see people be like, finally, with blockchains, we can do this.
Right. And I could without a doubt, being that it always seems like any of these projects, the worst thing that could possibly happen happens. I can totally imagine one of these being set up and them raising a lot of money, because crypto people like to pump their projects to raise the PR, the good press that crypto receives. And I can see some anti-choice activists somehow gaining control of the DAO through like buying the most tokens or whatever, and then diverting all of the funds to like some horrible anti-choice group. It really could not, I could not see a scenario where this would be good.
Yeah, and the first thing that sprung to mind for me was, the traceability of the blockchain. If someone's trying to circumvent laws, then, obviously it's a bad idea to do that in a place that's public and that the government or law enforcement can see that. But it also occurred to me that, like, those are not the only people that people have to worry about. And so, if you're making bank transactions, or if, the government is tracing your finances in more traditional forms, for law enforcement, that's one thing. But typically, anti-abortion activists can't see your payments or your donations. They don't have access to your bank account statements. And the idea that, oh, we should somehow do this in a public ledger where, people could potentially, here's my cat, where people could potentially track that and actually like identify individuals who are enabling abortions. Like, it's not just the police that you have to worry about at that point. It's, real dangerous people in some cases. And so that worries me a lot. And on the donation end of things, I feel like crypto practically since the beginning has had this reputation of being a great way to support whistleblowers and dissidents and people who are being persecuted, who may not. She wants my microphone now.
I think your cat is agreeing that this DAO is a horrible idea.
Yes, she's horrified. Yeah, so there's sort of this narrative that crypto is great for, funding political dissidents. But we've just seen a very prominent case where that turned out not to be true with Binance, who basically turned over customer information to the Putin regime on Navalny, his primary opponent who he has tried to kill, at least once allegedly. And so now, we saw basically a serious situation where people who are donating against the standing regime are now seriously in danger because of it. And I feel like, we could maybe take a lesson from that when it comes to trying to think of ways to, fund people who do need money that may not be, smiled upon by the government pretty soon if assuming this passes.
Right. Yes. And obviously, normally, I guess I wouldn't bring up there's enough actual crypto things happening where normally I wouldn't bring up like some random spur of the moment idea from just a bunch of random people online who just had a mind meld and all thought of the same thing at once, which maybe is horrifying in another way we haven't talked about, that they all had the same idea. But with what happened this week and then what I just said, how they had this idea, I think it sort of really goes to show that these are sort of like this is the space. Like, this is what we're talking about when we talk Web3. It's a bunch of people who are always thinking of like, oh, something just happened. How can I turn this into a crypto opportunity or an NFT project or a new Web3 app or something like that? I mean, even with the most good intentions, when we get down to it, we are talking about the monetization or the commodifying of something. And in this very specific example, it's the commodification of abortions.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think the best case scenario is, people just donate crypto and it goes to an organization and that organization responsibly distributes it, and that's fine. I hope that happens. It happened with Ukraine and it worked out kind of okay. There have been successful crypto fundraisers, but the whole idea around abortion DAO, where there's like a governance structure and they're talking about underground abortion networks on the blockchain and stuff like that. That starts to really, really frighten me.
Right. I always have a problem though with the crypto fundraisers because at the end of the day, when push comes to shove, I would say as long as it's just people straight up just donating it, it is more often than not, I guess, a net positive. But at the same time, when you're donating with the evil US dollar or, via, your bank account or credit card, there's no promotion behind it. It's just straight up a charity you're giving to help. Every crypto charity fundraising drive always feels like to me, like even though they're giving, there is the thought in the back of their minds or even in the front of their minds, honestly, where we're specifically doing this via crypto to pump crypto.
Right. And I think I see it a lot as like reputation laundering, where
Yes.
crypto has developed a negative reputation to a lot of people who associate it with scams and fraud and, money laundering and criminal activity for, good reason, I would say. And so, there's sort of this idea that I think people try to sort of rehabilitate crypto's image with things like, I mean, Ukraine was an enormous example of it. Look at all this money we're raising for Ukraine. And, the sort of idea that was being pushed that somehow Ukraine wasn't able to get donations already. And thank goodness crypto is here, which was just not the reality. There was quite a lot of standard fiat currency going to Ukraine.
A lot more than crypto, actually.
Quite a lot more than crypto. Right, exactly. And yet somehow there were headlines and all this, could crypto be the way that Ukraine, beats Russia and all this? And it's like, wow,
right.
It's weird to see.
Right. I did an episode on this, and the two things that stood out to me, and I want to get your opinion on these things, is that, because it does tie into the idea of fundraising via crypto in a broader sense. One was you probably saw all the different, cryptocurrency founders falling over themselves to try to get the Ukrainian government to accept their specific crypto. And it was literally the most flagrant, in-your-face public form of essentially blackmail I've ever seen. I will
Yes.
donate $1 million. I will donate $5 million to the Ukrainian effort if you accept my crypto. It was just like, my God. And then
Yeah.
when I dove, I don't know if I saw anyone else really point this out. I saw people point out that there was a spike when Ukraine originally offered the airdrop, but I long after, like, I gave them a real shot to show that, like, hey, maybe there's ebbs and flows. Like, weeks and weeks later, I went back and the crypto donations plummeted and continued to spiral, never shooting. Every day after was lower than the day before. Since the airdrop, it was the planned airdrop was canceled, I should say. So, example number one, you have the people trying to pump their coin. Example number two, you have the people donating specifically because they were told you will get something if you donate, something that possibly will be worth money. And then they all stopped donating once that was canceled.
And actually, even with that, I did read about that a little bit. Someone did a report on it, and I can't think off the top of my head who it was, but
Might have been me.
someone looked into it, and the number or the amount that people were donating was tiny. I mean, it was like very, very small transactions that would basically be enough to trigger the airdrop, but not enough to actually, not the kind of money that a traditional, like most people would donate, $20 or something to Ukraine. And it was like 10 cents, like
that one wasn't me. That was Vice. Cause I remember, cause they got on the phone or Skype or whatever. They spoke with one of the Ukraine, politicians, like the digital, head, whatever. And he said to them, we realized that this was a bad idea because exactly what you said. We announced it, and all of a sudden, it went from we were getting not too many donations, but they were substantial in the ones that were coming in, and then all of a sudden, we were getting tens of thousands of donations, and it was completely ridiculously small sums, I should stress. And to him, he said it was clear they were just trying to get the airdrop, and he had a problem with them trying to essentially profit off of war.
Imagine that. Yeah, I can't imagine why someone would have a problem with that.
Right.
Yeah, and there were, I was hearing about people basically Sybil attacking the airdrop, creating 10 crypto wallets and transferring minuscule amounts so that they could get 10 of the promised NFTs, which is just ghoulish behavior, if you think about it. It's like, donate to help people. That's the point of donations, help these people who are in an actual terrible situation. Don't donate because you think an NFT might be worth something, in a year from now. I was really glad when they canceled the airdrop because I was kind of dreading the sort of behavior that I was expecting to see afterwards. But it was funny to see people talking about how they got rugged by Ukraine because Ukraine didn't release their promised NFTs that they'd paid for or whatever. I think most people were being pretty tongue-in-cheek about it, but it's just kind of bizarre to see, the crypto ideology applied to something very serious, and, that idea that a war-torn country is rugging you because they didn't give you an NFT that you bought for 10 cents.
Right.
It just seems completely out of fiction.
Although now I'm thinking of the scenario where those same people get rugged by like Planned Parenthood, and I sort of do want to see it.
No, there's an idea.
Right. Maybe this wasn't such a bad idea, but for completely different reasons. So Molly, let's actually move on. Again, I wasn't expecting to really talk about this, but I felt like it was impossible to not bring up after this week's events. Let's talk about the other event that happened this week that was more specific to the crypto space, and that is the crazy Bored Ape Yacht Club NFT launch that happened late Saturday night, this past Saturday. So what date would that be? Saturday, April 30th, right? Yeah, Saturday, April 30th. And it completely failed. And, they sort of like, it was the Sideshow Bob stepping on rakes of
Yes.
cryptocurrency. It was, again, everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. And we're gonna get into it all. What was your reaction? Because you were the first like I logged in that night on Twitter randomly, maybe like I guess an hour or something after the launch, and I saw all these tweets from people who I forgot how I came across it. Maybe there was something trending in like the For You trends, and I clicked it, and I saw all these people complaining about how high the Ethereum gas fees were. And I was posting, like, sharing some of the tweets because the reactions were incredible. And then I saw you, and you were the first person who explained what was going on. And went, "Oh, that was tonight, right?" So,
Yeah.
what was your reaction when you saw what was happening?
So I had forgotten that it was happening. I mean, I knew it was coming, but I kind of like didn't look at the date and I sort of forgot what was going to happen. And so I saw that I saw the similar thing. People were like, "Oh my God, gas is so high right now. What's going on?" And I saw some people talking about NFTs, and so I went to OpenSea and looked at. You can basically just look at all recent sale activity on OpenSea, and so I went and looked, and it was like other side, other side, other side, other side, and I was like, "Oh, I recognize this." And so I sort of dug into it a little bit after that, and I was like, "Oh, there's this launch that I knew was happening because they'd been, I had covered some of the lead up to it where they first were like, we need you to give us your personal information, KYC, know your customer checks, which is not something that Bored Ape has ever required before. And they basically had made this announcement that people were going to need to do that now, but they wouldn't tell people why, which was very unpleasant news for a fair number of Bored Ape holders. So I sort of knew what was coming, and so I sort of dashed out a Web3 is great entry about it because I was just looking through the transactions on OpenSea and looking at how high the gas fees were, and I've never seen them that high before. I've seen them high. I mean, they do fluctuate and they spike to what I would think is an unacceptable level of like $60 or $100, but we were seeing gas fees of $3,500 or $4,000, something in that range. And even some people were talking about estimated gas fees that when they went to their MetaMask and they were trying to approve the transaction, MetaMask was basically saying you might have to pay $10,000 in gas fees for this transaction, which is unbelievable.
Let's actually rewind a little bit, because I think some people might be listening in and tuning in, and they might be thinking, I have never heard what Other Side is, and I've heard of the Bored Ape Yacht Club before. What is Other Side?
I think that's a very good question. So basically, the people behind the Bored Apes project have announced that they're going to create a metaverse game, and it has land in it, and that's almost all that they've said, which is, kind of wild when you look at it, but also extremely common in this space where people basically sell vaporware. It's like there's no actual game yet. You can't download anything and go play it. There's nothing that you can actually do yet, but you can own it, and people love that. And so people were basically bidding, or not, they were minting NFTs for little squares of land in this eventual, metaverse game, and different pieces have different attributes around, there's water in this one, and there's resources, and who knows, that will all apparently become part of this game, but I don't think anyone really knows what the game is going to be yet. So, who's to say? But, people sort of speculate around whether they could maybe like set up, it's like mine the resources on their land, or set up a little shop by a bridge so that, it's the only place people can go. It's very bizarre that people are basically building this game in their heads.
Right. Well, we do know that there will be land because they sold 100,000 NFTs of like that were plots of land, right? That's what these NFTs were.
Yeah, something like that. There were only like 55,000 that were publicly available, I think, because they
Ah,
sort of parceled off bits of them as these projects tend to do, where, the founders get a whole bunch of them and then there's all this stuff with the Bored Apes too, where, the Bored Apes, people who have hold Bored Apes already, or the various other NFT projects that are sort of in that family, they get early access. And with this one, I think they even extended that early access to another couple of like blue chip NFT projects, which I think is very much, we're really starting to see this sort of the rich get richer thing happening very widely in NFTs, where
all
it's
right.
like, if you own this NFT that resells for, over $100,000, then you get all this free stuff and you get early access to these other NFTs that are hopefully going to go up in price like these ones. And, it sort of is this, it opens the doors to things in a very similar way to, traditional finance and the way that, people who are into crypto talk about escaping, and so it's
Right.
kind of odd to see those things forming so quickly and so egregiously.
When they often bring up the whole idea of like this space is like democratizing the internet, and it's going to bring like equality to people of all classes, like it's going to help the poor and the those in poverty. And the more I think about it, like, I used to laugh at that, like, yeah, democracy in action, when I would hear something just like what you described. And now that I think about it more and more, maybe they are right, but what they're bringing to the table is actually very specifically this late stage capitalism, US current day democracy that we see in the real world right now. And they are giving us exactly that, it seems like.
Yeah, they're doing a great job of it.
Right,
But yeah,
right.
I mean, in this case, even people who had free NFTs still had to pay, several $1,000s just to mint them, which is absolutely insane. They, especially when people start to talk about crypto as this, it's got no fees. You don't have to pay the banks that are all these middlemen. You don't have to pay for your Western Union transfer that like skims a cut of your transaction. And then we look at stuff like this where people are spending huge amounts, far more than you would ever pay in like a Western Union transaction of the same size. It's like, which is it? Obviously there are cryptos that are trying to, be low fee and they are built in different ways. But one of the funniest things about the Bored Ape fiasco is that a lot of people who do use and are proponents of those other sort of alternative blockchains that don't have as high gas fees were saying, look at this. This is the obvious example of why you should be using Solana, which is one of the blockchains that is, based in proof of stake. Gas fees are super low, like fractions of a penny or whatever. But the same night that the Bored Apes released their project and absolutely flooded Ethereum, Solana went down for 7 hours because they were getting flooded with NFT minting themselves. And the problem on their end was actually that because gas fees are so low, it's trivial for bots to flood the network because, on Ethereum, if you have to send, $100 per transaction for the gas fees, that very much discourages botting because, each transaction is just it's prohibitively expensive. But on Solana, when there's practically no fee, you can get these bot farms basically spamming NFT mints. And in this case, completely taking down the network for multiple hours. And so it was like we were seeing, simultaneously two different networks with very different consensus mechanisms, with very different ideals, both just completely falling apart due to NFT projects.
This is just incredible in the sense that, like, you have on one end what the blockchain network with the high fees, the other end the blockchain network with the low fees, or barely visible fees even. And advocates for one will tell you why the other is better, and advocates for the other will tell you why the opposite is better. And it seems like they both absolutely suck.
It sure looked like it this weekend. Yeah, that was quite the fiasco. And the wild thing about it too is that, one project can do that. Ethereum has tons of projects using it in various ways. There's other NFT projects, there's people trading Ether itself, there's, these applications that are built on it, and everything totally ground to a halt because every transaction suddenly became so much more expensive than it ever had been in the past. And, that was just one project that did that. It sort of ruined everything for everyone, and that's like, noisy neighbors is something we talk about in software where like, processes running on a machine, if they start to take up too much memory or whatever it might be, they can sort of affect other processes. And like software has come up with some pretty good ways to avoid that, and that is sort of, it's a known problem that people think about and try to get around. And then there's Ethereum that's like, good luck, everyone. Guess you're just going to have to pay more. There's no attempt to sort of sandbox it. And so we end up with things like this.
Right. I think people should understand that about, because when they think of fees, they probably, again, if you're not familiar with crypto, they hear fees, they think of, when you pay with a credit card, the business has to take a fairly small fee, honestly, when it comes to the credit card use. And then, fees elsewhere, like if you use PayPal, there's a fee. PayPal fees can be annoying, yes. But you can tell what these fees are. Like they're pegged to a percentage usually, and then maybe like a flat 30 cents or 25 cents or whatever to it. So you could know in advance, okay, and make your choice about whether this is the right way to go. This is the correct payment processing service you want to use. With Ethereum, gas fees do not peg to any price. It is based on something that no one user, well, I guess except for the Bored Ape Yacht Club, can control.
Right. Yeah, I was thinking about this when this was happening. Like, can you imagine in real life, you go to the grocery store, you fill up your cart, you've got your groceries, you're in the checkout line, and then you go to swipe your card. And in addition to paying for your groceries, suddenly the credit card fee is like 3 times the total amount that you're going to pay for your groceries. And you have to be like, sorry, I guess I'll come back later when the transaction fees aren't so high. Everyone's using Visa all at once. And so, because of this, I can't afford to buy my groceries tonight. It's like,
Costco
people would not accept that.
Costco just had that hot dog drop for July 4th.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like people would not accept that if that was, how this was actually working. But then, with Ethereum, with Bitcoin, this is just something that happens. I mean, Bitcoin is a little bit less severe because it's a little less volatile, but it's a lot more volatile than, your standard grocery trip. And then people talk about how this is the future of the web and the future of finance. And it's like, is it? I don't know if that is.
It's also incredible because their whole thing is like, oh, this is super fast, instant transaction, right? Like that's, even though it's even that argument's not true, but that they say they get there, you could send a Bitcoin or Ether, and then seconds later, the person you sent it to will have it. Oh, what if the gas fees are really high? What if I want to send someone $100, a couple $100, and the fees are like close to that same amount? Oh, you can just wait till there's less traffic. Oh, okay.
Yeah, come back and buy your hamburger tomorrow when there's not as high of a fee.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's really funny too because it's not very fast. If you're actually waiting for the transaction to settle, it takes a while. And so, have you ever seen that video of the guy trying to buy a beer at Bitcoin Beach in El Salvador or whatever? And he's got his phone and he's like, on camera trying to sort of play it up for the camera. He's like, I'm going to buy this beer with my Bitcoin now. And he like taps his phone and then he waits for like a minute and he's like, any second now I can get my beer. And it's like, ooh,
Right. Yeah. What's amazing is this would be incredible technology maybe before, when did Apple Pay come out again? I mean,
yeah.
Like an Apple Pay, literally, you don't gotta you double tap the side and boom, your payment goes right through.
Yeah, it's an odd thing that crypto people are basically talking about the amount of time it takes for like the transaction to go through at what is sort of equivalent to like the bank level, because when you make a credit card purchase or if you transfer money, in some way or another. There's sort of this pretend period where you've transferred it or you've received it, but like technically it hasn't actually settled and your bank is still processing the transaction and it can take a day or two, which for most transactions is like not a huge deal. You know, like if I go buy a coffee and, you know, I can still take the coffee into my hand and, you know, go about my day while the bank figures everything out on the back end, you know, like it doesn't typically affect people all that much. And, you know, I think there are some legitimate arguments to be made around emergency payments where if you need to get someone money that they can withdraw right this second, you know, then there can be slowdowns, especially with larger amounts and stuff like that. But like most people that, you know, are talking about this are talking about just like the day-to-day transactions being, you know, slow in a way that most people don't actually realize is happening.
Right, right. You know, also, there's two things here that I thought about right away when you were talking about this. One is, like, even when it comes to like emergency transactions, we have to get someone money real quick. I don't know, maybe like, you know, they lost their wallet on an overseas trip and they got nothing. PayPal does offer like instant transfer now, like literally they charge you for it. There's a fee. I think it's like 2% or 3% or whatever. Again, if you happen to lose your wallet, just as Bored Ape Yacht Club mints a brand new NFT project, that's probably the more affordable way to go. the PayPal instant transfer. But
Yep.
but also just the last episode of Scam Economy, I had on Mario Gomez, who was arrested in El Salvador for protesting their Bitcoin law, and he told me, because I talked to him about this, I was like, you know, the main thing that so many crypto people, like you could knock crypto down, knock the space down with critique after critique after critique, and they will continue to hedge. And then at the end of the day, they'll always just fall back on, but remittances with people overseas, you're just lucky that you live in the US. When it comes to
Yeah, you're
remittances,
so privileged for
yeah,
your, yeah.
yeah. And I asked him, is this true? And he said, absolutely not. He said the vast majority of people in El Salvador, compared to like how much they make a month and how much they would send or receive, it would not make any sense to send via crypto, and it's actually still cheaper to do it via means like as basic as like Western Union. He said
Yeah.
people just aren't using it, at least in El Salvador. He said, like, I think he said the monthly income there was something like $300 or something like that. So, you know, if you're overseas and a family in El Salvador and you want to send them like what would be for them a month's salary, $300 on over Ethereum or Bitcoin probably would end up adding a huge chunk of fees to that for really no reason. I mean, I guess if you were going to send $100,000, Bitcoin or Ethereum would be the better way to go. But again, we're talking about a system that then benefits the wealthy over the ordinary people that were sold these systems are supposed to be actually helping.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've heard Mario speaking on Crypto Critics Corner about the same thing about remittances. And he also challenged the idea that they're fast because he was talking about spending, I forget what it was like 19 days or something waiting for a Bitcoin transaction to actually go through because it got stuck in the pipes of Chiva wallet somehow. And he, you know, was getting calls from tech support and it was like this nightmare scenario. So, you know, I think there's some kinks to work out there on the remittances argument.
Right. Right. So we have this Bored Ape Yacht Club. What I did actually, and this is sort of my this is my barometer for Ethereum fees, because whenever you bring up the astronomical fees on Ethereum, I don't know if you ever get this, but I always get this. I'm assuming you always get this. They'll always say, "Oh, you're being silly if you say, oh, if you want to send, $50 over the Ethereum blockchain to somebody, the Ethereum network, because that's not what that blockchain's for. No one should be sending small amounts of money. No one does that." And it's like, okay, if that's the argument, then explain this to me. If you want to register a .eth blockchain domain, literally what you guys are all pushing as like the identifier for your whole little world, like nothing, I haven't seen any other, there's different sort of, I guess, blockchain domain registries, like there are actual domain registries. But the .eth one with their $5 a year registration, that's the one that everyone is going to, and that's the one everyone is saying, this is going to be my identification in the Web3 space. If you want to send me money to my, send money to my wallet, this is what you would use. So that's sort of, to me, that blows it all out of the water in terms of that argument, because if at the very least, if you want that identification, you have to spend that $5 a year fee at least once a year. And so I usually go there to see, okay, how much are we spending on fees if I want to spend $5 to register this .eth domain? And that night I checked, and the fee for the domain for 1 year, $5, the gas fee, $4,661.80. I mean,
yeah.
What?
Well, and that's partly why I was watching OpenSea activity too, because it showed both that basically transactions on OpenSea basically stopped, aside from the other side, land deed transactions, which were pretty frequent. But, you were looking at that activity log, which usually has a bunch of NFTs going all over the place. And it was, 1, 2, maybe every couple of minutes, and only usually the pricey ones, because if you're going to be paying, $3,000, $4,000 for the transaction, you kind of have to, it has to be worth it. But then every once in a while, one would come through and I would see an NFT sell for like $200. That's like the actual price of the NFT. And so there were people, for some reason, who were buying NFTs that were like $200 and paying, $3,500 for the transaction. And I still have no idea what was happening there. I tried to reach out to one of the people who I saw do that, but I never heard back from them. But I'm very curious, why they had to have that NFT right then and there, and couldn't wait for gas to go down. And, what was the thought process?
I have to feed my family with this NFT. They're hungry right now.
And they were all really bad too. It wasn't even like the nice artwork ones. It was like,
wait,
those
exist?
They exist. Not on OpenSea a lot of the time. I feel like OpenSea feels like kind of the bottom of the barrel, but
I gotta say, you're being too nice, Molly. So I saw today that I know they previously announced that Yuga Labs was sort of like that night they put out a series of tweets with like the Pikachu shocked face, going like, "Oh my, what happened here? I can't believe it!" And they received a lot of criticism from even their own supporters and fans and Bored Ape hodlers, who were sort of like, "You knew this was gonna happen. I'll still send you all the money in the world, but you knew." And I was like, really? Like you there's nothing these guys can do that'll make you just be like turned away. But like, apparently they had the speculation, I should say. Let's be full for disclosure here. This is allegedly. There's some speculation that they had some sort of idea this would happen. And, it was purposely done this way so they could set up their own blockchain down the road or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like the only people who didn't see this coming, if you take them at their word, was Yuga Labs. Everyone else was like, what happens when you release 55,000 NFTs to, at a very high price, and people are going to scramble to get them? Gas war. That's right. A known thing. There's
and
a
it's
word
like
for
the
it.
only successful NFT project in existence. Like, literally, like I can't picture this happening for any other NFT project. Can you? Like, do you know of any other one that would even be at this level?
I mean, there are other pricey NFTs out there, but they aren't really sort of franchising in the way that Bored Apes seem to be doing.
Right.
I could see one of the other, if CryptoPunks decided they wanted to go do land now, there would probably be appetite for that. But yeah, they're few and far between. And
which is now owned by Yuga Labs too.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Decentralization!
Oh my gosh, what a world. Yeah, I swear I wasn't setting you up for that alley-oop, but actually it's true. But yeah, no, it's I think basically everyone knew it was going to happen. And even Yuga Labs had originally planned to do the auction in a different way because they were trying to mitigate gas wars. So, it's hard for them to say, oops, we didn't see this coming when they had been like publicly talking about trying to do the auction differently so that they didn't get these gas fees. And then they ended up being like, actually, Dutch auctions are stupid and it's not going to fix the gas fee problem. And people are like, what? Like, why would you just go to the worst thing then, if it's going to be bad? So I don't believe them personally when they're like, oops, didn't mean to, sorry. The sort of like tinfoil hat thing that I've been seeing is that this was a way for them to be like, we have no choice but to create our own blockchain, oh no. And, it seems like that sort of played out exactly as people predicted. There were people saying that, and then sure enough, Yuga Labs was like, so I guess we have to do a new blockchain now, and people are like, we're shocked.
I mean, they have such a hardcore fan base now that you think they wouldn't really need to do that. They could have just come out, in my opinion, and been like, hey, we looked at the technicalities of all this, and we should have our own blockchain. We're the biggest NFT company in the biz. We should be owning the whole network, really, so we could make sure that we could serve you guys right. Like, there's an easy way for them to. It wouldn't even take a lot of work to simply like finagle the wording to make it seem like it was all about customer support or something like that.
I think that's true, and I sort of was thinking about that as well. But they also did make a lot of news for basically, slowing Ethereum to a crawl and being the only ones that were using it. So, I wouldn't be surprised personally. I'm a cynic, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was a marketing thing.
Oh no, you're blowing my mind right now because I did that. I wrote about it. Oh no. Oh no! To me, I was going, ha 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 ha, another fail for the crypto heads, and now you're making me think, oh no, I fell for yet another crypto PR push.
I mean, I do it all the time on Web3. It's great. I write something and then people are like, they're just doing this for the marketing, and I was like, oops.
Oh.
Like, actually, when I posted a picture of some of the NFTs that sold, for $200 or whatever with the huge transaction fees, there were a couple of people who were like, this is going to pump the price of, it was Andy Milanakis's NFT project was one of them. There's like this pixel art goat sitting in a bowl of soup, which is apparently a thing that Andy Milanakis is doing. And people were like, you're going to inadvertently pump the price of Andy Milanakis's NFTs. And I was like, first of all, why does Andy Milanakis have NFTs? Second of all, if Web3 is going great, is now being used by like these NFT masterminds to like pump their projects, that's horrifying to me and like sort of tests the boundaries of reason, I think.
I'm waiting for the first NFT project to purposely get on Web3 is going great, and then putting out a press release taking out the irony in your name. Like, we were name dropped by the website. Web3 is going great as a great project for you to check out.
That would be very funny. I would be like, you know what? Fair enough.
I might have thrown the idea out there into the ether for them to use.
That's true. They're all gonna have to
intended.
credit you now.
Right. So I saw Yuga Labs is actually made nice, by the way, on their offer to refund people who paid gas fees and did not, because that's the thing I don't think people realize. The reason these gas fees are so high is because some people pay extra to ensure their transaction goes through. And if you don't pay a gas fee that's high enough, your transaction could fail, and you might be going, oh, you could just try again later. But no, if your transaction fails, you still pay the gas fee. I think a lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it goes against basically, every service that people use in real life, where if something goes wrong, typically the service is the one that like eats any potential cost or whatever it might be. But there's no way to do that with Ethereum. You still have to pay for the sort of attempt because it still uses computing power, and that's what you're paying for basically. So yeah, they there were people that lost, multiple thousands of dollars. They tried to mint their NFT, that didn't go through, and then some of them didn't even have, they didn't have extra thousands of dollars sitting around. So not only did they lose the gas fee, they also missed out on the NFT that they were trying to buy. And some people were really upset about that.
I mean, and I could imagine, honestly. And then Yuga said,
Right.
they'll refund those people who failed, their transaction failed, and it seems like they have. But I want to be very specific here. Yuga Labs is kindness, I guess. How much did they make again that night in one Saturday night? Something like $281 million, something like that.
Yeah, it was several hundred million. I forget the exact number.
Imagine making Jesus Christ, over a quarter of $1 billion in one night and being in for selling an NFT. Oh God. Oh my
Of
God.
something that doesn't really exist
For
yet.
yes, yes. Oh, and then so they decided to use some of that 280 some odd $1 million to refund some fees, but those refunds only went to people whose transactions failed, who were directly transacting with Yuga Labs. Think about all the other people using the Ethereum network that night who had failed transactions. I'm sure there are people who were even trying to buy Yuga NFTs on aftermarkets that night with
Right.
who lost gas fees and because they failed. Those people, thousands of dollars straight down the toilet, and they didn't even get a NFT out of it. I mean, I would say straight down the toilet, if they did get the NFT, but
Yeah. No, it was bad news.
oh my God. Molly White, developer, Wikipedia editor, creator of web3isgoinggreat.com. Honestly, one of my favorite websites in existence. I love it. And also one of my favorite Scam Economy guests. Always a pleasure to talk with you. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Where can people find you, by the way, if, other than Web3 is going great?
You can find me on Twitter. My username is Molly0xFFF, and there's also a Twitter account. Web3 is great for the side project. Or you can find my website, mollywhite.net.
And folks, if you're looking for something to do with $5 you just happen to have lying around and you don't want to pay roughly $4,661.80 in fees, do not put those $5 on the Ethereum network. Go over to patreon.com/MattBinder. You like where I went with this? And become a patron. I only ask for $5. You can give a little bit less. You can give a little bit more. You give a lot more if you want. But all I ask, the suggested donation is $5. And what that does is it enables me to continue to make great content for all of you here on Scam Economy, over on Doomed with Matt Binder, and really any other project I end up working on in terms of maybe reviving the newsletter I had running a couple of years ago. That's one idea. But let's keep it here with Scam Economy right now, where you can find all the links to the show over at scameconomy.com. The link to Apple Podcasts, the link to Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts, even Google Play is on there. You can also support this show by leaving a review over at Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. If you could do one, that would be great. If you could do two, that'd be even better. But please do go leave a review where you listen to the podcast. As always, the video version of the show is available at youtube.com/MattBinder, along with the post-show Crypto Hotline live stream that airs right after the premiere of the main episode. It also airs over at twitch.tv/MattBinder. Multicast, right? YouTube and Twitch. But over on Twitch, there's something really cool you can do if you don't got the $5 in your pocket, or maybe you did end up spending roughly $4,666 over on Ethereum to send $5. The money's tight now if you did that. I get it. especially if the transaction failed and you didn't even get an ape or land belonging to a non-existent ape game out of it. I know. But if you're an Amazon Prime subscriber already, you can simply connect your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account, and then you get Twitch Prime. And what's that? Amazon gives you a free Twitch subscription, a paid Twitch subscription. Not for you, it's free for you, but it's the equivalent to a paid subscription, meaning you subscribe to a Twitch user, hopefully that's me, and Amazon will convert that freebie into basically money for me. It costs you nothing, costs Amazon everything, and I come out ahead. It's a win-win-win-win. So please go do that if you can at twitch.tv/MattBinder. As always, you could check out my other podcast, doomedcast.com. Follow me on Twitter at MattBinder. And next time on Scam Economy, if you enjoyed my talk with Molly White, you're in luck. Molly returns again next week to break down a victory for the crypto skeptics. Wikipedia has decided to no longer accept cryptocurrency donations. There's a lot to talk about there. I swear it's not as simple and straightforward as it sounds. And Molly is going to join us again next week to break it all down for us. And with that, I will see you all next time on the Scam Economy.